Oh.
Hey, you.
We're glad to see friends, family, tri-arts, board members, and friends.
Yeah. We've got a lot of people.
And just really glad that you're here. Just want to give a few thank yous. First of all, to our daughters, Caroline, Samantha, Olivia, who organized the event. Really appreciate that.
I do too.
Great job.
I said I do too. And he was part of the.
Yes, you organized too.
Whatever. Okay.
A team event.
And I want to thank Sudden Fiction for hosting the event. They're real pros at this. They made it very easy for us to get this organized, and so I'm really grateful to them. All right, so it's my pleasure to introduce the author tonight, who also happens to be my wife for 56 years, but that's not important tonight. What's important tonight is that Dana, after how many years?
Well, long time.
Hard to know how many. After, I'm going to guess, a dozen years of work on this book, had it accepted for publication by Texas A&M Press, the University Press, which is a very big deal. Not easy to get through that vetting process. You know, the book manuscript went through 3 referees who made comments and recommendations.
It's okay to start now.
Latecomers will be seated at intermission. Anyway, so a dozen years of work and a bunch of expert readers who reviewed the manuscript, and when they blessed the manuscript, then it went to college faculty at A&M, a group of about 30 who had to sign off on the book. So getting it published is a very big deal. And I am incredibly proud of this lady for what she's accomplished, the way it started and how it evolved into a really wonderful book. So I'm excited to introduce her, and she's going to do some readings, and then we'll take some questions. And afterwards, if you want to get a stiffer drink, you can go up to Saints and Sinners and order. And if you want food, there's also food here that you can order, and they will bring it up to Saints and Sinners. So you can party on if you like.
Party on here for free talk.
Yeah, free talk. So, Dana?
Thank you. I would never have thought about publishing this book if it weren't for this guy. He read my first draft, and I have to tell you, I was learning about my grandfather. It was my journey. My first draft was all about me, learning about my grandfather. And John read it, and he goes, "Oh, that's all very well and good, but I think you need to take yourself out." It was the best advice anybody could have given me, because he said, make it a real biography and it'll be publishable. And I thought, publishable? I mean, it had never crossed my mind. I was talking to my childhood friend, Beth, we're filming for her because she wanted to have this video. She said, I'll help you get it on Amazon. You know, we'll publish it on Amazon. So that was in the back of my mind. It's going to be a family thing for my family, the whole big family that we have. But John had other ideas. And so I've never done one of these before, but I'll just tell you how it launched. In 2004, my cousin, Bruce, was cleaning out my grandparents' house, and he found my grandfather's diary. In 2004. So I began transcribing my grandfather's diary, which was massive. But I was doing it so I could get to know my grandfather. And it was hard, teeny tiny print, had to blow it up really big to even read it. And my good friend, Mo Keller, right here, my stepsister, Maureen Keller, she would type as I would read. And then we got this thing, and this is how big this diary is. I mean, it's pretty massive. And we transcribed and got it all done. We got this diary done in 2018. I started it in 2004, but I was working full time, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to do it until I finally stopped working. Becky kept me working. Becky's back here. I was at her school as a consultant. Finally said to Becky in 2018, I gotta stop. I've got to work on this book. But then I got her back in my life and got her on the Tri-Arts board. So here she is. But Becky was a reader of my book in one of those drafts. So Becky's in the book in our acknowledgments, and I really thank you for reading that. Maureen is in the book in acknowledgments for helping me so much with the book. My cousins are in it too. So this was the diary. My grandfather, I soon discovered. Oh, hi! Oh my gosh! Thank you so much. Give her a drink ticket here, and she can go. Oh, here. Oh, thank you. When I was transcribing the diary, my grandfather kept mentioning his private notebook. So I went to Texas for a second time. 2004, I went and got the diary. And then I went back, made another trip, and found something called his confidential, do not open, do not read notebook. And I looked at this thing, and it is a book about every single officer he was in prisoner of war camp with. And he made it confidential, private, do not open, because all throughout here, he tells us what he thinks of those people. And my great nephew back there, Carrie John Berry, KJ Berry, wave at everybody. When he was a little boy, he's not a little boy anymore, he came over and helped me do some of the transcription of this, the private notebook. And I was just mortified on the day that KJ was with me, and here he is, a little boy, his parents have entrusted him to me, and we're sitting there and we're looking at this private notebook, and we're transcribing something about somebody who has big titties like a woman. I thought I would just die. I had no idea that was coming. And here's little KJ with me. And so I was just embarrassed to death and apologized to his parents and everything. But that, my grandfather said it like he thought it. Put it in here in this private confidential notebook. So this was really a gem for me. It helped me get to know a lot of the people he talked about in the prisoner of war camp. So I had other cool stories. When I was in the midst of what John was telling me to take myself out of, a woman contacted me in 2016 and said she wanted a picture of my grandfather to put in her father's book. I had no idea who this woman was. Her name was Eliseo Rio, Rio was her maiden name. Anyway, turns out her father had written a book, published it in 2004, and she was re-editing it and realized she needed a picture of somebody named K.L. Berry, because K.L. Berry was in her father's book all throughout. Well, Lieutenant Rio had been a very young 22-year-old third lieutenant who graduated from the military academy in the Philippines after the war started. The war started in the Philippines December 8th, He graduated December 16th. By December 19th, this little Lieutenant Rio was in my grandfather's regiment. He wrote a book. He died in 2004, published the book in 2004, and I got the book. And there were stories about my grandfather in this book I had never heard. And so I went to the Philippines. My cousin and I, my cousin King, we went to the Philippines, we met these people. They took us all over Luzon during the week of, it's called the Valor Week. I can't say it in the Philippine language, but we went everywhere that the Bataan Death March went and where all the battles were. And I got a picture taken in front of one of the mile markers because they have them all over Luzon of the Death March. It was a very moving experience. The people were so gracious to my cousin and me and hosted us. So I got deeper and deeper into this book. At first I just thought I was going to transcribe the diary, then I was writing a book, and then out of the blue we got a phone call. John got a phone call from a gentleman named John Keck. John Keck, his grandfather and my grandfather were on the same 1914 University of Texas football team. And you see that in your timeline, 1940. It was one of the most famous football teams in Texas history. They made every record you can imagine. John Keck was writing a book about the 1914 football team. And I said, I'm writing a book about my grandfather. He said, oh, well then you have to meet my friend John Adams. So John and I go to Texas, we meet John Keck, John Adams. John Adams drags me over to Texas A&M University Press. The University Press said, if you write this as a biography and not just a diary, come back and see me. So that's how we got to Texas A&M. I tried UT Austin, where my grandfather had gone to school, but they don't publish military history books. Texas A&M does. Texas A&M also publishes books about athletes. My grandfather was both. So a little bit on the timeline that I gave you all, and I don't know if everybody got one. My grandfather was at UT in 1916 when there was a call from the Texas Guard to have people who would join the Guard, who would go to the border and fight Pancho Villa. Well, there's my grandfather. He's senior year in college. He goes, I'm going. So he goes to the border and he's going to go fight Pancho Villa. And darned if there was no Pancho Villa in Corpus Christi. But military historian Pope said that after the Spanish-American War, the military started bringing sports and athletics into their military training. One of my reviewers that John talked about, I had A, B, and C, I called them because I didn't know their names. Reviewer B, he didn't like the fact that I had gone into all this athletic side of my grandfather. He said, what are you doing that for? You know, you need to just do the Bataan Death March and the POW. Well, it was really important that I talked about the athletic side because my grandfather was so athletic. So Pope said they started using athletics after Spanish-American War. And he even wrote, think about it, throwing a baseball, what's that like? A grenade. Right, okay, yeah. Wrestling, hand-to-hand combat, boxing, bayonets. So they could see where all the sports could help with military training. So it became, after Spanish-American War, a regular thing. And you will see in this timeline that my grandfather was often the military athletic director, regimental commander of athletics in many, many posts in his life. So athletics was a big deal for him. It was such a big deal that he went off. He went to Siberia, as you can see, did all kinds of things. He comes back in 1924, 25, and he has a chance to go back to school. So he goes to UT because he didn't finish. Remember, 1916, he went to fight Pancho Villa, but he played football. He played football on the border with the 2nd Infantry, and it became the best infantry team in the country. There's even a book I bought that's all about the 2nd Infantry. My grandfather was on it. All of his classmates who were football players at UT, they were on it. So the 2nd Texas Infantry was a great football team. 1924, he goes back to college. He says, I'm gonna try out for the football team. Age 31. The whole stadium was filled with people watching my grandfather try out for football. They couldn't believe it. They called him the old man. He got on the team. Not only got on the team, he was a star. He made All Southwestern again. It was crazy. He made headlines in newspapers and all of that. He goes on, Fort Benning, becomes head football coach at Fort Benning. He's a captain by then. His assistant football coach is Major Dwight David Eisenhower. That was the first time they met, and they became fast friends, and they remained friends all of his life. And Eisenhower was always involved in Cale's life for the rest of his life. It was really, really cool and poignant. So after Fort Benning, he goes to China. You can see that. And then finally in 1941, the war is approaching. He's in Texas as the war is approaching. And he gets orders that he's going to go to the Philippines. So he goes to say goodbye to Walter Kruger, who is a famous general in San Antonio. Walter Kruger would be the general who helps MacArthur capture the Philippines again at the end of the war. So, let's see here. He said, don't read that. Oh, so he goes to say goodbye to Walter Kruger, and Eisenhower is Walter Kruger's chief of staff. Eisenhower had just spent 4 years with MacArthur in the Philippines, and he said to my grandfather, don't go. He thought MacArthur was okay militarily, but he also thought MacArthur was a drama queen, and he said so later, and it's in writing. I mean, he really didn't appreciate MacArthur's theatrics. So he was trying to get my grandfather to change his orders. I don't know if Cale could have, or if he even wanted to, because he had served in Siberia, he had served in China, he had served in the Philippines. He'd served in many places in Asia, so he felt comfortable with Asia. He spoke Russian, and he also spoke Chinese. So changing his orders, he may or may not have been able to do, but I don't know if he wanted to. He ends up in the Philippines. Final date that he is there, November 20th, 1941. When does the war start? December 7th. So he's there. His job is a senior instructor. He gets that job on November 30th. Senior instructor is a misnomer. It means you have command of a regiment, but you don't, because the Philippine commander has the command. You have to persuade him not to make mistakes. So it was a position that was untenable. He hated it. He didn't want to be there doing that. Well, it wasn't long before he became the regimental commander. I don't know what happened to the Philippine captain, but he was out of the picture by January 5th, and my grandfather was the commander of the 3rd Regiment. The 3rd Regiment was made up of all the little cadets who had just graduated on December 16th. They were all in this regiment. Civilians were in this regiment. No military training. And just random people were put in this regiment. No military training. MacArthur had told everybody, you'll have 6 months to train these soldiers. Well, they had no time at all, because the war started in the Philippines December 8th, and he had his regiment together December 19th, and they were fighting their first battles the first week in January. They were moving to Bataan. Bataan is a peninsula on the island of Luzon, and that was going to be the last stand of American troops because the Japanese hit not only Pearl Harbor and wiped out everything there, they hit the Philippines on the 8th, wiped out the entire Air Force, all the planes, blockaded all the ports, and landed in 5 different places in the Philippines, and were on their way taking over Manila when my grandfather and all the troops were ordered out of Manila and into Bataan. So they all had to go to the peninsula, make their last stand. My grandfather has taken all these young kids with him, and Lieutenant Rio wrote the book about him. Lieutenant Rio is finally realizing, and he writes in his book, I'm realizing where we are. We're kind of in a precarious place. We're all going to Bataan, and it looks like we're making a last stand. So poor little 22-year-old Rio is finally realizing what's happening. The regiment is sent over to the west side, on the China Sea side of the peninsula, to make a stand. The Japanese are coming from the north. These young troops are put to the test. They fight, but they're also run away because they're scared to death. And my grandfather had only 5 American officers to help train on the job 2 regiments. He was now in charge of 1st Infantry and the 3rd Regiment, so both of them. He was part of Wainwright's 1 Corps. And they fought, they were surrounded, and they had to go down the cliffs of the west coast of the Philippines and try to get behind the Japanese and rejoin all the American forces again. So that was their first battle, all these young kids. They were scared to death. They climbed these cliffs, you know, feet were just scratched and cut and everything, but they made it back. Wainwright was happy to see them. They get back in line. They're digging fortifications with their bayonets and their mess kits because they have no tools. MacArthur is taking away rations because he's saying he needs the rations on Corregidor, and the troops are starving. They're catching malaria. They have dysentery. They're sick as they can be. 2 days after they reformed, they're in the Battle of the Pockets, and that's where I'm going to read you a little bit about the Battle of the Pockets. Page